Well, good day and welcome to SOP. My name is Gary Willing. I hope you are having another wonderful day wherever you are. Now, I always like to do a couple things. I know it gets repetitive for those people who listen to these videos, but it's important that for me to tell you this. Do a little research, look into this, see if this information is true for you. If you check out the information on the Share International site, you get the best background information about Maitreya there than you can anywhere else. So that's why I always recommend that one. There are other links in the description portion that take you to other sites. They give you really good information, but that is the best. It's also free. And what I mean by free is not that they're charging you, but you don't have to even give them your email address. I cannot tell you how annoying that is when I want to just get some basic information about something, and the first thing I got to do is help them out and give them all my information for them to spam me. You don't have to do that. You don't have to deal with it. You can just go look at the information and move on. So hopefully you'll do that, and hopefully it will give you a better sense of whether this is true for you. The second thing I'm hoping that you do is join the discussion. If you have a question you want to ask me, post your question in the comment section. I'll try to answer it in the next video, or email me, searchforscience@mail.com, or simply let me know what you think. Post a comment. All right, now I had an email from someone, and I asked for clarification. I don't think I really got it, and I didn't get a yes or no whether it's appropriate for me to bring it up and talk about it. But this person wanted to know a little bit about my history, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I don't normally talk about my history, but I want to talk about my history in relation to this. Okay, so I'm very interested in how you came to create this site SOP, and what your history is. This is the reason why I'm saying it. I too am a seeker and read theosophy and other topics. Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself? It would really help me so that I can trust I could really trust what your videos talk about. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for that. First and foremost, I am not asking you to trust me. I'm hoping that you go and do a little research for yourself and see if it's true for you that way. Okay, so I do think the best way to hear this information is from somebody that you don't necessarily respect or look up to, okay? And therefore, you can be free to decide for yourself whether you think this is true for you or not. It's the same reason why Maitreya is already giving interviews on TV but not using his name. And so it's so that you can be free and honest for yourself. I don't really like what you have to say. And then move on, right? And to be true, and I've been very transparent about this. I did not understand this information the way it needed to be understood. I did not believe in it, and I did not like it, for lack of a better phrase, when I first read it for myself. And I first picked up Benjamin Creme's books, I did not like it. I thought he sounded arrogant. I just wondered what are you talking about? Because I kind of just flipped through the book. I didn't start at the beginning. I guess maybe that was my problem too. But I didn't like it. But when I put the book down and I just forgot about it, I couldn't forget about it. I kept thinking about it. What is up? I mean, I kind of said, read it, Gary, read it. It was something tapping me on the shoulder. And it was my intuition tapping me saying, there's something to this. Look into this. But yet I kind of resisted it. And if you want to know anything about me, Eileen, my mom will tell you this about me ever since I've been a kid. The thing that I put up the most resistance to in the beginning ended up being the most meaningful thing in my life. And this has to do with, this is anything with people, this information, other things. The things that I've procrastinated or just put up resistance to ended up being the best thing. In fact, one movie, I talk about Pulp Fiction. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but when I first saw that movie in the movie theater, I actually walked out in the middle of the movie. I was like, this movie sucks, right? Ended up being one of my favorite movies once I kind of went back and looked at it again. It's a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's violent. It's got a lot of language. But once you get into it, it's a really good movie as far as I'm concerned. But I didn't like it when I first saw it. So it was the same thing with this. I did not like this information when I first saw it. But when I started to dive into this information, Eileen, I started to remember experiences I had with Maitreya before I even knew this information. One was when I was in school, and I'll talk about that in a second. But my remembering of Maitreya experiences really started when I remembered what happened after I got back from a musical tour. And so I used to play music. I moved to Atlanta from South Carolina to pursue a music career. I didn't want to be the main guy. I wanted to be the backup musician. That was my goal. And it was something I always wanted all throughout middle school and high school. So I set out to do it, and I moved to Atlanta to do that. And I ended up finding a music gig that took me overseas. And I played with a band from the 70s and early 80s called The 3 Degrees was the name of the band. You can Google them. They've had a few songs. You probably recognize at least one of their songs, because they had a pretty big hit in the 70s. But anyway, I went overseas with them, toured with them for a while. About halfway through the tour, there was a lady. I'll never forget the lady. She was an older lady, but we were backstage, and she was all excited to meet the singers, and she asked them for their autograph, and of course she was bowing because she's Japanese, and then she turns to me. I just happened to be standing next to one of the singers, not really paying attention to what's going on. Nobody's asking me or anything or talking to me, but this lady just turned to me and looks at me, and she hands me the same little notebook that she just got their signature from. And I'm like, no, I kind of waved her off, and she goes, no. And at the time, I didn't really understand why she was doing it, and then I started to actually, truth be told, started to kind of think that maybe I'm starting to make it in the music business, because she wasn't the only one that asked me for my autograph. Others did after that. But it really was, she was just being polite. To be honest, she had no idea who I was. She was just doing that because she didn't want to hurt my feelings, to be honest. But like I said, I was young at the time, so I had a different thought about it, then. But anyway, so she handed me the book, and I wrote in there peace. I wrote it because I was trying to think, well, what do I do? What do I say to this woman? Because she didn't understand any English, right? So I drew a peace sign. I drew a little heart symbol. I drew a happy face, and then I signed my name, and I gave it to her. And she, of course, bowed and went on to the next person for their autograph. And then we went to a different city, and then somebody else asked me for my autograph, and I did the same thing, peace, heart, and happy face. I did it a few times. I don't know how many people asked me for my autograph. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, when I got back to the United States, reality set in. Now I'm back to being the same old Gary that, just looking for a job and stuff. And I was very unfamiliar with Atlanta at the time, and hardly ever went to this side of town in the year or so that I had been living in Atlanta. I mean, now I go there all the time. I was just there the other day. But anyway, I got lost. I didn't know where I was, and I needed to meet somebody who ended up being about 5 or 6 miles away from where I was. And I pulled into this little gas station, and there was a payphone. This is before cell phones, and there was a payphone there, and I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't looking for a sign. I didn't really know anything about, I knew about the Masters, but I wasn't thinking that they were communicating with anybody, so I got out to call somebody, because that's how you did it back then. You didn't have a cell phone. You had to use a payphone. So I grabbed some change out of my little change, cup in my car, and went over to make the payphone call. And I dropped the quarter in the phone, and I was about to call Harry, and I looked at all this graffiti, and I realized, wow, this phone's got a lot of graffiti on it. And I look over to the left. I remember it was on the left on the pedestal, and it was written in black magic marker, and it said, "To Gary." There was a heart sign, a peace sign, and a happy face, so it switched it up a little bit. It said, "Still alive and well," and there was a little cross with 2 little diagonal lines at the top, kind of showing maybe a little bit of a light, and it was signed the Christ. So, "To Gary," heart sign, peace sign, happy face, still alive and well, cross, sign the Christ. And people, I've told this story hundreds of times, and every single time that I'm talking to somebody about this, they invariably ask me, "You must have been blown away by that." I wasn't, actually, because I was not thinking about any kind of miracle. I just remember thinking to myself, who's Gary? He signs his name like I did back in Japan, and just whoop, didn't even think anything of it after that. Did not think a single thing about it, Eileen. So then, when I came across this information, again, didn't like it, but then it took me a few weeks or months or whatever to kind of get into it, and I started reading it, and then I met a friend, and I started talking to her about this. "Have you ever heard about this thing?" And she's, "Oh yeah, I know about this," because she was from California, Southern California, so she knew about it, but she wasn't really that active with any kind of group there, but she knew about them. She gave me a contact number for somebody here in Atlanta that did transmission meditation. Her name was Dolly. And I called her up. She was kind of like, how do you know my number? And I was like, I don't know. So a friend of mine just gave it. She didn't even know who the woman was. But anyway, so she gave me her number. I got in kind of in touch with the group and found the group to be a little quirky, a little strange when I first got there. And then I ended up realizing that I was probably more quirky and more strange than they were. But anyway, so then they started talking about some of the letters to the editor in Share International. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I remember I was sitting next to this woman named Phyllis Eisen. And she said, well, Maitreya and these masters have been appearing to people, and they appear as ordinary homeless people or this, that, and the other. I'm like, really? And a few weeks went on, and I was sitting next to Phyllis, and somebody was talking about their own personal experiences. And I said, I was just thinking the other day about something that happened to me, and I told her this story on the payphone. And her face just dropped, and she was like, "Oh my God, yes, that's got to be it. Got to be from Maitreya." And I said, "Oh, couldn't be. There's no way." And she goes, "No, really, Gary." And I told the group, and they were stunned silence. No, they didn't have anything to. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you'd never heard anything like this before." And she was going to California for the conference that year. And she told Benjamin Crème, and Benjamin Crème told her to write it in, and then the rest was history. And then I started thinking, then the next one I thought of experience was the time that Maitreya saw me he came to me in elementary school, actually. So this is a long time, but even before the payphone. And this must be the first time that he saw me, because he said, I miss you, my brother, right? But I'm sitting with my classmates. I know nothing about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. I'm not expecting anything out of the ordinary to happen that day. I am a third grader sitting with my classmates eating lunch in the cafeteria. And the special needs kids were walking out, and every single one of these kids, they were probably young adults, probably close to 18 at that time, were still in elementary school because they had severe learning disabilities. And I remember being a little scared of them, because I was a kid. I didn't really know what was going on with them. Now I wouldn't have that kind of sensation about them, but at the time I was a little turned off by them. Anyway, they were walking by, and I knew every one of these kids because they had been, around in elementary school, even though they were much older than us, from when I was in kindergarten. So I remembered them in kindergarten, first, second grade, and then we switched schools to this school in the third grade, and some of them were over there. So I was very familiar with them. And there wasn't any new people coming in and out of that class. It was just, they were all the same. There was probably about 8 or 9 of them. Anyway, this one day, it ended up being Maitreya. There was a different kid there. He was blonde, blue-eyed, didn't seem to have any kind of special needs, but he was with the group. And he was walking behind them, and they weren't really paying attention to them as they were walking out. And I'm sitting there eating, and I see the kids walking past me, and then I see this one guy whose eyes are like laser beams on me. And I'm like, why is this kid looking at me? You know what I'm saying? So I start, starting to eat, pretending like I don't really see him. And right in front of all my classmates, Maitreya, as this little kid, comes, because he looked to be about the same age as me, maybe third grade or whatever, comes right at me and starts hugging me very viciously right in front of all my friends, swinging me back and forth, back and forth. My brother, I love you so much. This is what he said. I love you so much, my brother. I've missed you so much. He's like swinging me back and forth. And I was about to die because the entire table was laughing at me. And I had no idea who this kid was. I'd never seen him before. And why he was calling me his brother and embarrassing me like this was, I was about to die, And I just remember pushing him away, and I said, "Get away from me, you octopus." And that was the most insulting thing I could say at the time. And then something happened to me. As he walked away, he immediately let go. As he walked away, he turned around and he smiled at me. And he wasn't hurt at all that I said or did anything like that or reacted that way. He looked at me and smiled at me. And those were the eyes of Maitreya, but they were blue. And he looked at me, and the thought that crossed my mind And I didn't realize why I had this thought then, but I remember this thought. It said, don't worry, you'll get it one day. And it walked away. And I felt so bad that I treated him in front of my classmates like that I sought him out afterwards to try to, maybe be his friend. Maybe he was, and I thought maybe he was just looking for a friend because he was lonely or something. Never found him again. And then I eventually forgot about that situation until about a year or two or three after I heard about Maitreya. And then I wrote that in, and of course that was Maitreya. And then there was a time I saw Maitreya as a hitchhiker on the side of the road, and he was, I'd never seen a hitchhiker get two cars, and possibly me being the third, to stop to pick him up. But he was waving people in like he was waving. He was just really excited. That's what I'm saying. Like I said in the last video when somebody said about maybe there's no hope. No, Maitreya has so much hope and so much joy. That he was such a joyful character just on the side of the road, just trying to wave people over to get him to pick him up. Man, he was like smiling. I remember him, and I didn't pick him up because somebody else had stopped before me. He jumped in their car and drove away. And then there was a time when I saw Maitreya where he sat down and talked to me for about an hour on one of my music gigs on a break. And the one thing that he said to me was that really stuck was he was talking. He talked about a lot of stuff, but he was talking about painting, and he was actually encouraging me to paint, which I do from time to time, and I see that as something I want to do more of eventually, but I just don't have the time right now. But he talked about painting and so forth. And you can listen to that story. But the one that really, I have to say, I had thought about doing, you asked me how did I come up with this, or the history of this channel and so forth, but the one experience that really, like I said, I was kind of debating whether to do a YouTube channel. I had been listening to people on YouTube. I wanted to talk about this on YouTube and just kind of focus on my own personal experiences and so forth, but I didn't really know if I wanted to do it or not. And I was kind of going back and forth. And then I remembered something that happened to me in 2009, early 2010. And I started this channel in 2019, so it was about 9 years before that. I was cleaning a building. I was also waiting tables on two jobs. And I was trying to get my family from the Philippines here because I was engaged to my now wife from the Philippines. And I was trying to get her here, and I was really stressed because I was working very, very long hours. And I would always have to clean the building after work. And this building was a semi-secure building that was a government building on an airport. So you couldn't just walk in, and that's an important part of this story. But you had to have security clearance to go in. But anyway, so I would go and clean this building. And for weeks, this one part of the building, which is at the very top, had an exorbitant amount of trash. I don't know where this stuff was coming from, but it was coming from somewhere. They would just have trash cans piled with these heavy, heavy books. And these books there was something to do with in the office, and it doesn't really matter, but they were almost like phone books. They were really heavy. And it was like day in and day out, these books were in there. It was crazy. And so I would have to go, and I have to make multiple trips to the dumpster and go back, and it was just causing me enough grief to where I was just like, I don't know if I can do this or not much any longer. I about had it. And one night on the way home after dealing with this, I thought of an experience with Maitreya, and I said to Maitreya, I just need somebody to help me with the trash in that building. I don't know why I even thought to ask him of this. This guy's busy as crazy. And so I did. And then I thought better of it, and I said, no, don't worry about it. I can handle it or whatever like this. Well, anyway, I think it couldn't have been a few days later. I think it was the next week. On Monday, I went to go clean the building. I still had to clean the bathrooms, and I went up to the second level, did what I did up there, and then I went up to the top where all that trash was. And I remember I was about to open because this door was always locked. I was about to open the door, and I was like, oh, God, I'm going to have to deal with this trash again. And I opened it up. I went into that building, that side of the building, and there was nothing. There was no trash. there was a few things on the floor, and I still had to dust and all that kind of stuff, but every single trash can was totally empty. And I was like, ooh, okay, maybe they were out of the office. That was my thinking, is maybe they're out of the office now, right? So then I did my thing, went home. The next day, the same thing. Well, now there's going to be trash. There was nothing. It happened for 5 straight days. I had totally forgotten about asking Maitreya this request to help with the trash. I had totally forgot about it. Okay, until this is the until. Weeks later, this was in the early part of January 2010, so this was about a month or so after this. I'm cleaning the building like normal. Their trash sometimes they would have heavy trash, but it wasn't as bad as it was before that. But anyway, that whole week, no trash. And then, like I said, it got back to normal, and there was trash in the trash cans and da-da-da-da-da. So anyway, I'm up in the 3rd floor where this office part is, and I'm about to go in and clean the men's room, and this woman comes out of that office, and she goes, Gary, I propped that door open. Okay, so because that door automatically locked. She goes, I left my keys on the desk. Don't close it. I won't be able to get back in. It's no problem. And she goes, make sure you tell your associate not to lock the door either. I said, who are you talking about? She goes, the guy that helps you from time to time. And I said, nobody helps me from time to time. I said, who are you talking about, right? Anyway, now she's actually worried, right? So she's actually worried that somebody got in there for something. And she goes, this guy that helps you get the trash from time to time. I had never seen him vacuum. I've never seen him dust, but he helped and get the trash. And I went, oh my gosh. I had asked Maitreya for help. It must have been him. And I said, what did he look like? And she goes, he was a tall African-American man, looked like he was about 55, 60, something like that. Very polite, very soft-spoken, came in, said hello, grabbed the trash, and left. And I said, when did it happen? And she goes, and she named the week that there was no trash in the building. I never saw Maitreya, mind you. This all happened away from me. And I always tell people, when you look at the hand of Maitreya, that image of the hand of Maitreya, there's an image, you can go to the Share International site. He says that's the closest that any one of us can get to him without him being in the world yet. But once he's out in the world, known for who he is, then of course we can get closer to him. But if you ask him for something, he will do everything he can to help you. But sometimes you might not know that he helped you, right? So had I not run into Carol that day, I would have never known that Maitreya helped me get the trash that day. But that week that he got that trash got me over the hump. I never felt so stressed again. I never felt anxious and, burned out. It just was a little bit of a help, It didn't do it. And so he didn't clean the whole building. And that was the funny thing when I said something, and I told this story to Ben, I said, wow, he really helped me clean the building. He goes, no, he didn't help you clean the building. He just got trash out of that one side of the building, which is true. It was 100% true. That's what happened. And so when I was thinking about doing this podcast or this YouTube series or whatever, I thought about that. I was like, oh my gosh, he is real. He's a real person. You know what I'm saying? He's exactly who Benjamin Creme said he was. And I was like, I got to talk about this. But then, this is the other part of the story that's kind of funny, is then I started to think, well, what was that woman's name? I couldn't think of that woman's name for the life of me. I could not think of it. And I didn't want to just say this woman. I wanted to use her name in the video, but I wanted to record it. So I asked Maitreya, I looked at the hand of Maitreya, the image of the hand of Maitreya, and I said, Maitreya, can you help me remember this woman's name? That's what the request was. The very, very, very next day, I was at work doing something totally different. I stopped cleaning that building years prior to this. So it wasn't going back to the building and me asking this woman. I hadn't seen this woman in years, and I was on a different job in a different part of town, and this woman comes waltzing right into where I work the next day. I couldn't believe it. And I was so excited to see her. She had no idea why I was so excited. And I went, why? Oh, I said, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever. What is your name? And then she remembered who I was. And she goes, my name is Carol. And ever since then, I've never forgotten it because I've talked about this part of it. And then I went and recorded that video using her name. I cannot tell you, anything to get you to trust me because you don't know who I am. But I'm telling you, every one of these experiences that I've had with Maitreya, I'm not embellishing any one of them. And they are extraordinary. And then there was one time back, I think it was in February of 2020. I'd already started doing this podcast, and my wife asked me to go up and change the Ring camera battery, and I have to get up on a ladder to do it. And I used to do it every other week or so, and I never had a problem. But this one time I was totally by myself. There was nobody else at the house. Nobody else would have saved me if something really happened to me. But I got up on the ladder, and the ladder's about, it's about a 6.5, 7-foot ladder. I can't remember how tall it is. But anyway, set it up, went up to go change the battery, and something happened. I don't know what it was, but the ladder started to tilt, and I couldn't grab I couldn't grab the wall fast enough, and I fell off the ladder 6 feet, headed head first right toward my driveway. I mean, I could have been killed. I mean, easily killed, or paralyzed for life, or broken a bone, or I mean, anything, right? And about all I could think of when it started to tilt was all these cuss words. F this, oh my God, I mean, that was my first thought. But as I fell off the ladder, I remember I was about halfway to killing myself. I just screamed out, Maitreya! That's all I could do. I couldn't say, Maitreya, help me. I didn't even have time. And I stopped in midair. I don't, to this day, it seems fanciful to say this. I literally he stopped me in midair and laid me down on the concrete. It was, imagine being a mother's first time ever laying her own baby into the crib. It was that soft. I did not even mark up my jeans. I had no abrasions, no pain. In fact, when I was lying on the concrete, my back felt like something had popped and healed in a way, because my back was a little tight that whole day. I felt better I felt better falling on the concrete of my own driveway than I did before. He saved me from dying. And that's not the only time that I've been saved from an accident from one of these masters. These masters save people all the time because we do stupid stuff all the time, And then the other one I want to talk about was, this is kind of a funny story, but this was back, I think, in 21, 22. No, it was in 2021. And I used to train on my job. I used to train assistants that were working for my company. And it's a retail company. I don't want to give the name because I don't want anybody to look it up or whatever. But anyway, I deal with from time to time I deal with truckers. And so this was in the back part of the truck stop that I was at. Anyway, so I think it was a night or two before this happened. I was lying in bed with my wife, and I'd found my baby book that my mom gave me. She gave me my baby book months ago, and we're just flipping through it, and I see my first picture of myself. And I'm a baby in the crib in the hospital, and I have my wrists tilted, and I have my fists kind of, I look like a boxer, like I'm protecting myself, like I'm about to joust and punch somebody, right? And babies usually have that kind of, I don't know, there's something that the baby pictures they kind of do. So my mom said, that's normal. But what makes it funny was I turned to my wife at that time and I said, wow, it's like I've been fighting my whole life. Because I looked like I was a boxer as a little baby coming out of the womb. I was getting ready to start boxing everybody, right? So on my job, I was with my trainee in the back part of this building with all these trucks, and I hear who ended up being Maitreya. He's a long way away, but I hear him screaming my name, and I can hear him over these loud trucks because you have these deaf units. They're not deaf. I'm sorry. They're reefer units on these trucks are really loud, and so the back part of this is the decibel level is really loud, but I can hear him over the top of this screaming my name as loud as he could. Gary! Gary! And I had never seen this dude before in my life, in my life. But he was a truck driver. He was an African-American truck driver. And he comes running toward me with just this tremendous amount of joy. And I remember thinking, he's probably my truck. I don't know what made me think that other than just me recognize him for that. But he came right over to me. Oh my God, Gary, I haven't seen you in forever. How you doing, man? It's good to. And like I said, the whole time I'm seeing this guy, I'm like, I've never seen him before, right? My trainee totally ignored him. I don't even know if she even saw him or not. But then he puts his hands up in the same position that I had just seen the picture of me as a little baby. And he starts shadow boxing me. Ben used to do that. Benjamin Creme used to do it all the time. He would always shadow box people for fun. And he kind of touched my stomach a little bit. And he goes, man, it's like you've been fighting your whole life, man. Said the same thing that I just told my wife like a few days prior to that. He goes, but you're beginning to learn what I learned a long time ago. And he goes, man, I got to go. It's great seeing you again. And he jumps into the truck that he's about to leave. And I'm walking in that direction anyway. And he smiles and waves and toots the horn as he's walking away. And I'm about to touch the truck. And I realize that truck is really not there, actually. And I was inches away from touching it. And this very, very stern thought crossed my mind. Do not try to touch the truck. So I pulled my hand away. And he smiled again and drove away. But anyway, thank you for letting me share that. But the reason why I have this YouTube channel, the history behind it, is not to get people to believe me, not to try to convince them of anything. It's just to let you know my side of this story. I am just an ordinary person with what I think to be extraordinary information that I'm willing to share with you. It's up to you to believe it or not. It's up to you to trust it or not. It's up to you to do with something with this information or not. It's not for me to try to get you to do anything with it. If you're a seeker, like you said, seek out this information. Go to the Share International site, look at this stuff. Buy one of Benjamin Creme's books and read it and see if it's true for you. Dive into the Marshall Plan, see if the need for peace, see if the peace really can come through the principle of sharing. That's why I have those links in the description to help you guys with just this, But I really appreciate the questions, and feel free to shoot me some more questions if you want. I love you guys. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you in future videos.